Good evening, Tallahassee. This is your student meteorologist, Morgan Krause, bringing you this Tuesday's edition of FSU Weather. Moving into a live look at Doak Campbell Stadium, it is about 86 degrees. If anyone else felt the northeast wind coming in today, I felt like Tallahassee was trying a little bit hard to be fall today. So taking a little bit more of a look at that, Tallahassee is sitting at an 86. We have an 84 in Quincy, 85 in Perry, kind of sitting pretty normal across the board, a little bit on that higher side, but what else are we going to expect from Florida? Looking into tonight, we are going to have it be 68, so they are successful a little bit in cooling those temperatures down. We have a little bit of wind coming from south-southwest, and I would just expect wear like a little flannel or something. I always get excited to be able to do that. And tomorrow it is going to be about 76 degrees, so I think tomorrow is about the coolest in the week forecast, which we'll get more into that later. And I personally will be bringing out those fall clothes. And going into the day planner, it looks like it's going to be 76 around noon, cooler in the mornings, but it's going to heat up pretty quickly, but we are going to stay on the lower end. And yeah, so in this show, we're going to cover the week ahead, tracking Category 5 Hurricane Milton, and key messages for Hurricane Milton. So all of that and more on FSU Weather. Welcome back. So going into this week into Tallahassee, we have our current local radar. Oh, and there is not too much rain to expect. So looking into the temperatures, again, it is going to be 86, getting a little bit hotter up in here in Mariana. And again, Live Oak 82, that's pretty nice. I'm kind of jealous of that. And tonight's going to be cloudy, a temperature about 69, some wind coming in from the northeast. Like I said, just make sure to wear a flannel, something to cover up a little bit. And moving into tonight's forecast, we do have some cooler temperatures, a little bit warmer near the coast, and as we move up here into Bainbridge, Thomasville is going to be a little bit cooler, which is usually to be expected. And going into Wednesday's forecast, we do have some 70s across the board, which, like I said, it is going to be a little bit cooler. Wednesday is probably going to be the coolest, as we can expect with some of those severe weather events that we'll get to later. Looking into the week ahead, we have some highs of 80. Like I said, Wednesday is going to be the coolest in this week, and then chances for precipitation are mostly going to be on Wednesday and Thursday, surrounding, like I said, those severe weather events that we are expecting. And then Sunday, we have a 10% chance of rain, but other than that, it is going to be a pretty dry week and start to heat up as we get into Sunday and Monday. Moving into our spotlight city. So I'm actually from Tampa, Florida. I am so excited to be talking about this. You can see a bit of what I call the skyline of Tampa right behind me here. And looking at those current conditions, as most of us know, we do have a hurricane coming into Tampa right now. So it is 78 degrees and it is already raining. The wind is pretty low right now, but that's expected to increase as we move. Looking into our future cast, Wesley Chapel is actually my hometown. It is going to be about 75 degrees. Moving into Wednesday, you can see the severe weather starting to pick up. That 77, 76 degrees is going to be met with lots of rain, lots of wind, and more on that later. And going into the day planner, we do have some rain, as I said, that's going to be pretty intense, and it is going to stay in that bit of a hotter temperature for those rains, which does increase the effects, as well as the Gulf of Mexico is overall just heating and going to show those effects throughout the week. Going into the weekend forecast for Tampa, Thursday is going to be still experiencing a lot of the rain from Milton, and as we move into the weekend, it's going to relieve a little bit, get hotter, and those chances of precipitation are going to become lower. And going into our southeast, we're going to have Daniela take it over from here.
Thank you, Morgan. Yes, so across the southeast, we're seeing a lot of blue skies. We got some passing clouds going over Orlando. Most of the southeast, though, staying in the mid to upper 70s. Of course, the outlier being Orlando at 82 degrees right now. And across the current conditions across the whole southeast, We're seeing a little bit of a cool down to our west as we have a cold front beginning to come in right now, but we're still mostly staying pretty warm. We see mid 70s in Nashville, upper 70s in Little Rock, and then mostly 80s as we go down into farther south into the Florida peninsula. And you can also see the cold front approaching with these current dew points. You can see as they get lighter the farther west we go. We even have dew points at 41 in Little Rock right now as this air is beginning to get much drier, and that is anticipated to keep going farther south and east for the next couple of days, which actually has an impact on Milton's direction when it makes landfall. And current heat index values, of course, are staying mostly the same the farther west we go due to that drier air, but of course, where it is more humid and those dew points are higher, such as the Florida Peninsula, those dew points can get into the upper 80s as well. We even see 87 here in Orlando for the heat index. Now, as we take a look here into our future radar, right now we have Milton down here to our southwest and is expected to make landfall at some point tomorrow, late tomorrow night into early Thursday morning, and go across the whole entire Florida Peninsula before dissipating into the Atlantic Ocean sometime between Thursday night and Friday. And of course, with a lot of that rain coming from Milton, we are expecting a lot of flood threats across the eastern portions of the peninsula and everywhere in the south portions of the peninsula, where there's going to be a lot of storm surge threats as well as heavy rain associated with the impacts of Milton. So going into tonight's forecast, it is going to stay pretty mild and comfortable, starting to feel a lot more like fall towards the south. You can get 69 in New Orleans, 64 in Montgomery, even getting into the low 50s in Nashville. But of course, for Florida and the farther south we go, we are going to still see those mild temperatures and even some rain coming into central Florida as we begin to feel the impacts of Milton starting tomorrow. And again, tomorrow's forecast, we're going to see those upper 70s and 80s, but again, the whole central and south portions of Florida will start to experience showers and thunderstorms as conditions will begin to deteriorate. But as we go into tomorrow, we're going to still see some warmer weather into the low 80s, maybe even upper 80s in New Orleans as well. But they're going to see a lot of sunshine and not a lot of clouds, so they definitely will have a lot of good weather to enjoy. Now, as we move into Tampa, of course, our 3-day outlook, we are anticipating a lot of rain, a lot of severe impacts that we will talk about more in just a couple of moments. But as Milton enters, outer bands will begin to enter tomorrow. Those tropical storm conditions will begin sometime tomorrow morning into midday. And of course, we expect a landfall sometime late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, which is where a lot of those high rain chances will be in the Tampa area. However, thankfully, starting Friday, you will have some sunshine and some low 80s to be able to look forward to amidst the severe weather that we have going. Also for Orlando, again, they are anticipating 100% chances of rain, 90% chance of rain on Thursday as well as Milton impacts the area. But also again on Friday, they will have that 20% chance and afternoon highs in the low 80s. And as we take a look into our rainfall totals, we do have an impact here. Of course, a lot of big flooding threats. We expect a lot of rain, even up to possibly 7 to 10 inches in central Florida. And of course, that continues to slowly lessen the farther north or south you go, but that also will depend on how far north or south Milton decides to make landfall, and it will really impact those rain totals. But either way, much of central and south Florida is anticipating a severe flooding threat associated with this storm. So as we move forward into Milton to talk about the tropics right now, Milton, unfortunately, from the 5 p.m. advisory from the National Weather Service, recent recon mission has said that Milton has re-strengthened to a Category 5 storm with max sustained winds at 165 miles an hour, pressure dropping to 905 millibars. Now, last night it did drop below 900, which was we haven't had a hurricane drop below 900 millibars since 2005.
Yeah, so we're breaking records with this one, and I think that really speaks to a lot of the people who are born and raised in these areas. You are probably never going to have experienced a hurricane like this one. No matter how prepared you are, if you are in an evacuation zone, it is time to evacuate.
Yes, right now would be the time to do so now. If you plan to leave tomorrow, it will be too late, especially for those between Tampa Bay and Sarasota area, as that is where model consensus has kept landfall for Milton right now. So as we see here, we're looking at models. Of course, we can ignore the one outlier we have, but pretty much the consensus between all the hurricane models we have is eyeing either just at Tampa, just south of Tampa. And again, that could shift in a couple of hours or within the next 12 hours.
Yes, and no matter where those spaghetti models, no matter what trajectory you're seeing online, they are going to block off most major highways from the area and all of the outer roads as well. And that is why we really urge you to evacuate, especially tonight if you have not already done so. Tomorrow it will be too late. And yeah, our hearts really do go out to everybody in the area, but we really urge you to stay safe. Your life is much more important than property in a situation like this, as well as Tampa is low-lying and will experience some of those storm surge effects that we will get into.
Of course. So yeah, so we look at here at our current warnings. We have hurricane warnings stretching all the way from Cedar Key to as south as Fort Myers and going all the way to the eastern portions of the state, as well as Milton is expected to cross the whole entire peninsula. And as it enters into the Atlantic, then the other side of the state are still going to see hurricane force impact. So that's why we have a lot of that bright pink sitting in most of the state. But of course, in the red, we still have tropical storm warnings and hurricane watches where those conditions are either going to happen or are possible within the next day and a half.
Yep, and with the widespread, the pink, it really just shows you that we can't necessarily predict the wobbles of a hurricane, so you need to be prepared no matter where you are in that area.
Exactly, and another huge threat that is going to be honestly the most life-threatening part of Milton is the threat of storm surge, especially if it does make landfall more towards Tampa Bay. Storm surge values at the maximum can be up to 15 feet. And considering, like you said, how flat in the geography of Tampa Bay and the whole Gulf Coast of Florida really in itself is super shallow. So these storm surge values being that high is extremely devastating. It's catastrophic. It's not frankly something you can survive.
Yep. I think Mayor Jane Castor of Tampa actually was just live on the news and said the same thing. I believe her exact quotes were, if you are in Zone A or B, you are not going to make it out of this alive, which is a very grim statement coming from one of the most positive government officials that I've ever had the chance of following before, as well as she did say that it has not been a hurricane this severe in the Tampa region in over 100 years. So like I said, anybody born and raised in the area has not experienced a hurricane such as Milton.
And we can also take into consideration how much Tampa has changed since then, all the urbanization that has happened in the last century, nonetheless, the last 30 years.
The shoreline degradation, the mass construction, it's a booming economy, but it also does make it more at risk for those who are living there and those who have businesses in the area.
And the impacts, absolutely. This is going to be, unfortunately, a very devastating storm to impact the Gulf Coast of Florida. So, in summary, Hurricane Milton, even though before it is a Category 5 right now, it is still anticipated to weaken prior to landfall, but nonetheless, that does not mean to let your guard down. It is still expected to make landfall as at least a Category 3 hurricane. Even possibilities of a Category 4 are not out of the picture right now. Storm surge areas are expected to be life-threatening. Like we said, up in Tampa Bay area, it can be up to 15 feet.
And we have seen life-threatening conditions and devastating hurricanes hit landfall as a Category 3. So just like Daniela said, don't take the drop from Category 5 to Category 3 as meaning that it is no longer dangerous. It simply has to do with wind speeds and does not take away the threat of the life-threatening storm surge.
Exactly. So either way, Gulf Coast of Florida, you are anticipating really, especially from just north of Tampa all the way to Fort Myers, you have the potential to have, and even in Orlando, mind you, I'm not only concerned about the Gulf Coast of Florida, I'm also talking about the Atlantic coast of Florida as well as Milton makes its way through the peninsula into Thursday night, Friday. You can expect hurricane force winds and heavy rainfall, which a lot of the state has already been saturated from Helene just a week and a half ago. And
which I feel like that really does increase the risk of flash flooding, because a lot of people don't realize that they are in a zone that is at risk for flash flooding. They might not live right next to a big body of water and not really see that that could happen to them. But flash flooding, just like it says in the name, is quick and it is deadly. So we want to make sure that we prepare as best as possible. And for those living in evacuation zones, that is by leaving tonight.
Yes. So we really urge y'all, if you are in these areas, to please adhere to your local officials, like heed those evacuation orders. They are there to save your life, and this is not a storm you want to mess around with. So with that, our thoughts are with the Gulf Coast of Florida tonight. really everyone in the path of Milton as it begins to approach tomorrow. And with that, we will give you one last look at our 7-day, but we hope you have a great night.
Thank you.